Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time when we must face an uncomfortable truth. There are those in this world who will not listen to reason, not because they cannot understand, but because they refuse to. They do not seek truth, they seek victory. They are not moved by honesty, they are animated by the thrill of distortion. And in their presence we find ourselves tangled in the exhausting task of explanation, as if the light in us could ever satisfy the darkness in them. You must understand there are those who do not hear your words, they feed on them. Not for wisdom, but for ammunition. Not for insight, but for leverage. Every justification you give them is not a step toward peace, but a foothold for control. It is the nature of some hearts to resist truth, not with reason, but with cunning, to twist sincerity into folly, to make righteousness appear foolish. And if you have ever walked away from an argument feeling drained, while the other left smirking, then you have encountered such a spirit. There is a reason Christ was silent before Pilate. There is a reason wisdom often cloaks itself in stillness. When you explain yourself to those who only seek to undermine you, you are casting pearls before swine. The wise do not demand explanations, they discern. The foolish, however, will pull you into an endless maze of defense, and no matter how truthful your words, they will twist them into chains meant to bind you. So stop explaining yourself to the demons in people. You owe no answer to deception, no justification to malice, no dialogue with the wicked. Speak when truth can be received, and be silent when it is only being weaponized against you. For your time is precious, your spirit sacred, and your peace worth far more than any approval the world pretends to offer. There are those in this world who do not engage in conversation to seek truth, but to establish dominance. They are not motivated by curiosity or a genuine desire to understand. Rather, they are driven by the need to control, to shape reality according to their own interests, and to bend others to their will. These individuals are not always obvious in their intentions. They do not announce their motives with raised voices or clenched fists. Instead, they disguise their manipulation behind reasonable-sounding questions, seemingly innocent challenges, and persistent demands for justification. They do not debate in good faith, they probe, prod, and distort, not to find the truth, but to shift the ground beneath your feet, until you are no longer standing on firm conviction, but on the quicksand of their making. One of the most effective tactics of those who seek control rather than truth is the endless demand for explanation. They ask for clarity not because they wish to understand, but because they wish to exhaust you. They will challenge your every word, not in search of knowledge, but to keep you on the defensive. Every response you give them will be met with further questioning, not because they are confused, but because they want you to doubt yourself. The goal is never resolution but domination, never enlightenment but entrapment. They do not want to see your perspective, they want to weaken your confidence in it. These people are often skilled at using rhetoric as a weapon rather than a tool for discovery. They will twist your words, misrepresent your intentions, and shift goalposts as soon as you come close to proving your point. If you present evidence, they will dismiss it. If you offer reasoning, they will ignore it. If you attempt to clarify, they will deliberately misunderstand. And in this way, the conversation is never about what is true, but about how much control they can exert over you. Another sign of those who seek control rather than truth is their inability to concede even the smallest point. Genuine seekers of truth are willing to acknowledge when they are wrong, willing to consider new perspectives, and willing to adjust their thinking when faced with compelling evidence. But those who seek control cannot afford to admit fault. To them, every interaction is a battle, every conversation a battlefield where losing even 1 inch of ground is unacceptable. Their pride is not in being right, but in never appearing wrong. And so they will cling to absurdities, double down on contradictions, and deny the undeniable just to maintain their illusion of dominance. What makes these individuals particularly dangerous is that they often operate in subtlety. They are not always the loud, aggressive debaters who seek to overwhelm you with force. Sometimes they appear as the soft-spoken friend who questions your every decision, the intellectual who finds curiosity while undermining your beliefs, or the mentor who insists that your perspective is naive. But no matter their form, their goal remains the same: to keep you explaining, defending, and justifying while they remain untouched and unchallenged. There is a profound exhaustion that comes from trying to explain yourself to those who have already made up their minds. No matter how carefully you construct your words, no matter how patiently you lay out your reasoning, and no matter how sincere your intentions, there are people who will never truly listen. They may let you speak, they may even nod along, but they are not hearing you. They are waiting for their turn to respond, to twist your words, or to dismiss your point entirely. Their goal is not to understand but to reinforce what they already believe. Some people do not reject your explanation because it is unclear or lacking logic, but because accepting it would require them to change their perspective, their behavior, or their sense of control. And change is uncomfortable. To acknowledge your truth would mean confronting their own flaws, their own misconceptions, and perhaps even their own wrongdoing. Rather than face this discomfort, they shut their ears, raise their defenses, and convince themselves that your words hold no value. It is far easier for them to ignore you than to examine themselves. Often those who refuse to listen are not merely indifferent to what you say, but are actively invested in misunderstanding you. They do not seek clarity because confusion serves them. If they twist your words, they can paint you as unreasonable. If they feign ignorance, they can prolong the argument and wear you down. If they pretend to be open-minded while subtly rejecting every point you make, they can maintain their illusion of fairness while ensuring that nothing actually changes. At times, this refusal to listen comes from a place of pride. There are those who see every conversation as a battle, every disagreement as a contest in which admitting another perspective is equivalent to losing. They fear that acknowledging your truth will make them appear weak, so they reject it outright, not because it is false, but because their ego cannot bear the possibility of being wrong. They become masters of deflection, shifting blame, bringing up irrelevant points, and even attacking your character rather than addressing the substance of your words. You may think that if you just explain yourself better, if you find the right words, the right tone, or the perfect argument, you will finally break through. But the reality is, you are not dealing with a lack of understanding, you are dealing with a lack of willingness. You cannot force someone to hear what they refuse to accept, and the more you try, the more you waste your energy on a conversation that will never be fruitful. True listening requires openness, humility, and a genuine desire for truth. If those qualities are absent, no amount of explanation will ever be enough. When you recognize that someone is not truly listening, the wisest thing you can do is stop speaking. Walk away, not in defeat, but in wisdom, knowing that your words are precious and should be spent on those who have ears to hear. When Jesus stood before those who sought his downfall, he did not argue, defend himself, or plead for understanding. He did not waste words trying to persuade hearts that were already hardened against him. He knew that their minds were made up, their motives were set, and their desire was not to understand but to condemn. Before the high priests, before Pilate, before the crowds shouting for his crucifixion, he remained largely silent. Not because he lacked an answer, but because he knew that no answer would change the outcome. He understood that some people do not seek truth, only justification for the evil they have already chosen to commit. His silence was not weakness but wisdom. When the chief priests and elders accused him, he did not refute their lies. When Pilate asked if he had heard the charges against him, he gave no response. Even when Herod, hoping for a miracle or a display of power, questioned him eagerly, Jesus refused to speak. He knew that his words would not be received with sincerity. Those who interrogated him were not looking for the truth. They were looking for ways to trap him. Every response would have been twisted, every defense dismissed. He had performed miracles before their eyes, spoken truth with divine authority, and lived a life without fault, yet they still sought to destroy him. If they would not believe his actions, why would they believe his words? Jesus understood the futility of explaining himself to those whose hearts were closed. He had already experienced it countless times throughout his ministry. The Pharisees, despite witnessing his power, constantly tested him, not to learn but to condemn. They demanded signs, yet ignored the ones they had already been given. They posed questions, not to gain wisdom, but to set traps. They could not afford to acknowledge who he was, because doing so would mean surrendering their own power. And so he did not waste time arguing with those who had no intention of understanding. His silence was not just an absence of speech, but a declaration of truth. It exposed the corruption of those who accused him. It left Pilate uneasy, forcing him to grapple with his own conscience. It showed the crowds that they had already made their choice, with or without his defense. In the end, his silence spoke louder than any explanation ever could. It revealed the nature of those who sought to destroy him, their blindness, their deception, and their unwillingness to see. There is a lesson in this for all who walk in truth. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every question is asked in good faith. There are times when words are wasted on ears that refuse to hear. In such moments, silence is not surrender, it is wisdom. Jesus knew this. He understood that the battle was not against mere words but against hardened hearts. And so he let the truth speak for itself, even in silence. There is a unique exhaustion that comes from trying to explain yourself to those who are unwilling or incapable of truly understanding you. It is not the kind of tiredness that comes from hard work or meaningful discussion, but a deeper kind of weariness, the kind that drains your spirit, leaving you feeling frustrated, empty, and unseen. Some people do not ask questions because they seek clarity. They ask because they want to challenge, belittle, or undermine. No matter how carefully you choose your words, no matter how much patience you show, they will twist, dismiss, or ignore what you say, leaving you feeling as though you are speaking into the void. The wrong people will not listen with open hearts. They will listen only for the purpose of arguing, not for understanding. They will demand explanations not because they want to learn, but because they want to wear you down. Every response you give them will only lead to another challenge, another rebuttal, another attempt to make you feel as though your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are invalid. They thrive on making you doubt yourself, keeping you in a state of constant defense, forcing you to prove yourself over and over again. And in the process, they take more than your words. They take your energy, your peace, and your confidence. Explaining yourself to the wrong people is like trying to pour water into a broken vessel. No matter how much effort you put in, nothing will be retained. You could repeat yourself 100 times, rephrase your words, provide evidence, and offer every bit of clarity possible. Yet it will never be enough. The wrong people do not seek truth, they seek control. They do not seek resolution, they seek power. The more you try to explain, the more they will move the goalposts, shifting the conversation in ways that keep you off balance. They do not want to understand, they want to dominate. Over time, engaging with these kinds of people depletes something essential in you. It makes you question whether your voice even matters. It makes you second-guess yourself, wondering if you are the problem, if perhaps you are not explaining things well enough, if you need to try harder to be understood. But the reality is the issue is not with your words, but with the unwillingness of the listener. Some people do not want to understand you because doing so would require them to change. They prefer to keep you in a cycle of endless justification because it keeps them in control and keeps you off balance. Your spirit was not meant to be wasted on battles that cannot be won. There are those who will hear you, who will receive your words with sincerity, who will engage with you in good faith. These are the people with whom conversation is fruitful, where explanations bring clarity instead of exhaustion. But to those who refuse to listen, no explanation will ever be enough, and the more you try, the more you lose a piece of yourself in the process. Wisdom carries with it a quiet confidence, a deep understanding that does not need to be constantly proven or defended. The truly wise do not demand explanations because they have the ability to discern truth without excessive debate. They do not need every detail spelled out for them, nor do they insist on endless justifications. Instead, they observe, listen, and perceive beyond the surface. A wise person seeks understanding through patience, reflection, and experience, while a fool demands explanations not out of genuine curiosity, but as a means of control, argument, or self-importance. The foolish are never satisfied with an answer because they are not looking for clarity, they are looking for leverage. They use demands for explanations as a way to challenge, not to comprehend. Instead of listening with an open mind, they listen with the intent to pick apart, twist, and refute. Their questions are not born from a place of humility but from a desire to make others feel uncertain. Where wisdom seeks truth, foolishness seeks dominance. The wise understand that not everything needs to be explained, but the foolish insist on justification for even the obvious, turning every conversation into a battle rather than an opportunity to learn. A wise person values action over excessive words. They understand that truth often speaks for itself and does not require constant defense. They recognize that a person's character, consistency, and choices reveal far more than long-winded justifications ever could. When they seek understanding, they do so with sincerity, asking questions that build, rather than demanding explanations that drain. They do not force others into a cycle of proving themselves, but allow wisdom to unfold naturally. Fools, however, operate from a place of insecurity. They do not trust what is plainly seen and instead demand explanations for things that are self-evident. Even when given a clear answer, they often remain unsatisfied because their demand for explanations is not about truth. It is about keeping others off balance. When someone constantly requires you to explain yourself, your choices and your beliefs, it is often not because they lack understanding, but because they refuse to accept what is in front of them. The wise recognize that not every question needs an answer, especially when it is asked in bad faith. They know when to speak and when to remain silent, when to engage and when to walk away. The foolish, however, will demand explanations endlessly, yet never truly listen. They will ask and ask, not for the sake of learning, but to keep others trapped in justification. True wisdom is secure in itself. It does not feel the need to interrogate every statement, nor does it manipulate conversations to force others into endless explanation. Those who are wise understand that understanding comes from insight, observation, and a willingness to see beyond words. The foolish, however, only feel powerful when they can force others to explain, not realizing that in their insistence they only reveal the emptiness of their own understanding. Peace is one of the most valuable things you possess, yet it is constantly under attack by those who thrive on deception. There are people who do not engage in conversations to seek truth, but to distort it. They do not argue to find clarity, but to create confusion. To engage with them is to step into a battle where the rules shift constantly, where honesty is met with manipulation, and where sincerity is used as a weakness to be exploited. The more you try to reason with deception, the more entangled you become in its web, and before long you find yourself drained, frustrated, and far removed from the peace you were meant to have. There are those who will twist words, take things out of context, and misrepresent your intentions, all to draw you into an argument that serves no purpose but to keep you on the defensive. These people are not interested in truth because truth requires accountability, and accountability threatens their sense of control. They would rather create an illusion, a false narrative that serves their interests, than acknowledge reality. No matter how patiently you try to explain, no matter how much evidence you provide, they will not accept it, because accepting it would mean admitting fault, and that is something they are unwilling to do. Arguing with deception is like trying to hold water in your hands. No matter how tightly you grasp, it slips away, changing shape, never allowing itself to be contained. Deceptive people will never argue with consistency because consistency exposes falsehoods. Instead, they will shift their stance as needed, moving goalposts, denying things they previously stated, and accusing you of things they themselves are guilty of. It is a game to them, and the only way to win is not to play. The moment you refuse to engage, you take away their power. You rob them of the control they seek, and you reclaim your peace. Guarding your peace means recognizing when a conversation is no longer about understanding but about control. It means having the wisdom to walk away when you see that the discussion is built on dishonesty. It means valuing your mental and emotional well-being enough to refuse to let deception pull you into its chaos. Not every argument is worth having, and not every challenge deserves a response. There is strength in silence, in knowing when to disengage, and in refusing to let someone else's dishonesty dictate your state of mind. Your peace is too valuable to be sacrificed on the altar of someone else's deception. When you argue with someone who has no intention of being honest, you give them what they want: your energy, your time, and your frustration. But when you choose not to engage, you keep your peace intact. The truth does not need endless defense against those who are determined to reject it. Stand firm in what you know is right, and let deception crumble under the weight of its own lies while you remain unmoved, secure in the peace you refuse to surrender.